I got to a point where I was pretty sure I was going to die alone in my room with a needle in my arm.
I'm a former Detroit police officer and rode with the One Percenter Motorcycle Club. During that time, I was involved in a lot of altercations. I had a gun shoved in my face. The trigger was pulled, and I got a plate under my left eye. I'm Manny Vitale, and this is my story.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to My Fight, Our War. I'm your host, Manny Vitale, and we are here again in Connecticut with our family and friends and just some amazing guests. And this episode, this weekend here, I definitely want to give a special shout out to Coach Tony Morrissey from the Brian Cody Brothers and Sisters Foundation, all the Hope Dealers, and everyone who's a part of that amazing family. I've been very blessed to meet Coach and everyone else, and our next guest as well, and some of the other guests who you're going to be seeing on these episodes here. My Fight or War, Coach, and the Brian Cody Brothers and Sisters Foundation are going to be working very closely together, and that's to get the word out about addiction and awareness and the evil that it is. So definitely appreciate all your love and support. It's needed. And we need people like our next guest. Tito, why don't we start off by, why don't you introduce yourself, who you are, and where you're from?
All right, my name is Tito Cassiano. Do I look there at you?
You look right there or at me, wherever you want.
I'm Tito Cassiano, born and raised in New Britain. And no, I'm in Bristol native. And I've been in recovery for a long time, in and out for a long time. I finally decided to stay in May 1st, 2009.
That's your sober date?
That's my clean date.
Congratulations, man.
So pretty soon, God willing, which I don't have any doubts, I'll be coming up on 16 years.
Fantastic.
Yeah. So yeah, I'll just get started.
With everything with Coach and all that, all the different stories are just so, like we were talking about earlier, how our stories are so different, but when it gets down to the core, how they are so much the same. And like with drugs and alcohol, when the only thing that's different is when it was brought into our lives. So as far as like for you, how old were you when, first of all, like growing up, how were things for you and your family life growing up? Was there any issues there?
So growing up, we grew up in the projects.
Mm-hmm.
Both parents there, they worked. Spanish household. It was me, my sister. My half-brother came to live with us like some years after. But we grew up in the projects, and my mom was a heavy drinker. All that generation, pretty much the alcoholics, our generation became the addicts.
Yeah.
That's where the drugs were more into our generation. And my uncles, they were into the drugs too, but not crazy. They were more into like the selling and stuff like that. But they did their partying, but they were more into selling. And my older cousins, the same thing. So I just remember like, I would say just like a really young age, because my brother was older, because he's from like my half brother. He's older.
Mm-hmm.
Well, he was older. He was into the disco era, so he liked to party. You know what I mean? So I was young when I first like smoked weed, and he had me smoke weed, thought it was funny, and that was it. Like an innocent thing for him at that time,
Yeah.
But that was it. And then like as I started getting a little older, with all the parties going on in my house, I used to sneak drinks from the adults. That's what we did as a kid, And honestly, when I stop and think about it, I'd say my first drug wasn't really the substance. Well, my first addiction wasn't really the substance. It was more like the thrill seeking, right? So like I was a young kid. I used to like jumping from heights off trees, and the more it scared me, the more I wanted to do it.
Oh, you had that adrenaline junkie.
I was an adrenaline junkie. That was my first like addiction, was that. When I was sneaking the drinks, I wasn't getting buzzed. It was the sneaking around and not getting caught.
Okay.
You know what I mean?
Yes.
So that's what it was. And then eventually, like as time went on and I got like more into my teens, like I was doing a little selling, I was doing a little bit of this, a little drinking. I liked the buzz. At 14, I was pretty much running the streets and drinking and smoking a little bit of weed. I got involved with some gang stuff, at that age. Because before that, I had a lot of anger issues and I got in trouble. So then I held it in. And then, I was a young, fat, buck teeth, glasses. So I went from holding everything in. Middle school, got picked on a little bit. They closed down one school. I was on the wrong side of the town.
No.
So that's how I was very territorial back then. And then I kind of just held everything in until I'd say 8th grade when I was a ticking time bomb. I was angry and the anger didn't go away. I didn't know how to cope with it. And then one day I remember like beating the bully up, basically. You know what I mean? And then after that, I realized, oh, this works, right? So a lot of the stuff became learned behavior. So I started learning what actually worked for me and what didn't work, right? So I learned how substance numbed me. I learned that worked.
Mm-hmm.
So when I drank, now I was hanging out, getting a little buzz, but I also realized like it's helping me not feel anymore, right? When I didn't know how to cope with emotions or when I was in a tight spot or a pinch, I knew violence worked. It'd get me out of it. I knew if I beat up the bully or if I did that, I wasn't gonna get picked on anymore. So I started realizing all these things, whether they were good behaviors or not, they worked.
Man, and this is at a young age.
At a young age,
I mean, 8th grade. So
8th grade.
you realize that, okay, I'm feeling like shit right now, emotionally.
Yeah.
But so if I slam a few drinks, that part will go away.
Yeah. And then I was accepted by the friends too. So then I found that group of people that we drank, we smoked weed. So high school was pretty much me skipping school all the time, smoking weed. And, I felt accepted again. I didn't feel like, because when I sat down and was alone, I still felt like the fat bucktooth kid that was getting picked on. Like that part took a long time to like leave. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So, we were talking about earlier, like we come from different walks of life, right?
Uh-huh.
I could be in the projects. This one could live in a mansion. And addiction can find us all. And one thing, maybe not every detail may be the same, but those feelings and our coping mechanisms, they're a lot the same. So I learned like the coping mechanisms that I learned, they worked, but they worked temporarily. And I didn't realize like what it was going to lead me to. Because I always told myself, I'm not going to be that. In the projects, I saw like the junkie, I saw the crackhead, I saw that. I didn't think I was going to become that. I looked down on that. That's what we talked down about, because I sold too. I tried to hustle a little bit, you know what I mean? Sold a little weed. I got into the rave scene. I was into like the hallucinogenics. I was doing that, selling it, quick money, hanging out. It was great. Going out dancing and hanging out, having girls, doing that, like breaking out of that mold that I didn't want to be because, so everything that I was looking was outside of myself to help me feel better about the inside parts that I was missing. And I didn't get all that stuff until after I got into recovery. So for years, through my teens, I didn't get clean until I was 31. When I was 31 was when I was starting to figure it out. That's when I started trying to figure out stuff where like, oh, okay, through like, I was doing meetings. I went to a few different like fellowships. I won't like really get into the fellowships, but that was my base. That saved my life in the beginning. Going to
That
12.
was at 31.
Well, it was before that,
before
but at
that.
31 I got clean,
Okay.
I stayed clean. That's when I stayed clean. I'm 46 now. But yeah, so like at 31 is when I got it. But for years before that,
Yeah.
in and out of detoxes, in and out of treatment centers,
So high school, like you said, you and your buddies were doing,
Oh, yeah.
like skip, that was just party time. So
Party
that was
time.
your teen years.
My
going
teen
up
years,
to,
I
like,
did
What
that.
about like after high school? What happened?
Yeah. Well, throughout like high school too, like so like from like the middle school to like high school, I was running around with older people. I was doing, the gang stuff. In the 90s, are you from Connecticut?
No, I'm from
no,
Detroit.
that's right, you're from Detroit.
Michigan.
All right. The 90s got a little crazy out here with the gang stuff, the gang wars and everything. So I made it out of that like before, because I honestly, like, believe it or not, if I didn't get more wrapped up, I got more wrapped up into the drugs, the gang stuff. So I kind of like went that route, but it got crazy here in the 90s, It's like stuff like when it started getting to the point where like when we were here, there's stuff that we saw in the news, like, oh, that's only in LA. That stuff, you almost question like, is that really how it is? You know what I mean? And then it's getting like that. Next thing you know, people that were friends, family, they're on opposite sides, they're beefing. They're shooting each other, like it got crazy out here. And luckily my cousins were still involved. They were like, and I here and there got in, out, really in and out. I'll tell you right now, I wasn't consistent with anything until I got clean. I was consistently using, but I wasn't consistent with like, the gangster. I wasn't consistent with friends. I wasn't consistent with family. I wasn't consistent with jobs. I did things until I just didn't feel like doing it anymore.
It's like the rules were cool as long as they were Tito's rules.
Yeah.
If it was like, okay, you're going to be part of this gang, but you're going to do this, this, and this. Yeah, okay, well, I'll see you.
Yeah.
So it was like, but
So,
the drugs were
I was doing it,
consistent.
and then it was once I really fell into the drugs, then everything else was negotiable for me. I'm like, I don't know. Maybe I'll be there. Maybe I'll not. You know, even relationships. I didn't have any significant relationships like with females at that time. It's like I date, and then I was gone. I didn't even give you the courtesy of letting you know we weren't dating anymore. I was just gone.
You didn't show up.
I just wasn't there. You know, that's what I did. I was going to work. I did things for a while, and then I'm not coming in today. I want to show up, and I come pick up my last paycheck, and like no shame. You know what I mean? Like no shame in that.
I hear you.
And that was my life. It was just like starting something, couldn't finish anything. Matter of fact, that became such a habit. I remember when I actually started working again in recovery, like I questioned like if I could actually follow through and finish a job because it was so embedded in me that I never started or finished. I always started something and never finished it. So then like becoming like, I did construction work my whole life. So then when I started getting to the point where like I was like a foreman, I was running crews, to actually start and finish a job into completion was, to me, it was like, holy cow, like, it started building something different in me, So, I mean, I'm gonna get into like a lot of stuff, but I also want to give the flip side, because in recovery, like I learned like to build that confidence where I don't have to question myself anymore. Like, yeah, I can actually do it. But in the beginning, I questioned myself. And I think early in recovery, too, that's a big thing. A lot of times we come in early recovery, we quit on ourselves because we think we can't do it.
Oh, yeah.
We
we're
have
our
like
worst enemy.
Yeah. So we have like all these things, like all the bumper sticker slogans we hear like in the rooms and all that stuff. Like, hey, like don't quit before the miracle happens and all. And I used to listen to that stuff and I was like, this is so corny as shit, And then after a while, when you live it, you're like, oh,
this actually works.
This is what they mean. Like all those things, the slogans I thought they were corny as shit in the world, I'm like, oh, that's because someone lived it and got to that side. And now that I'm on that side, I feel it and I'm living it. Now I know. And I tell people the same thing. I say, hey, it may sound corny, it may sound cliche, but don't quit before a miracle happens, man. Because maybe you're trying to get a job and you're putting an application after application and no one's hiring. And the mindset is like, no one's going to hire me. No one's going to do this. My family doesn't accept me back. Those are the thoughts we have, right? Because we spent so many years wrecking things and we want everything right away like this. That instant gratification.
Bam.
Right? And then, it takes work. It takes time. You got to be consistent. So all that stuff that I wasn't doing, I started learning to be, hey, I got to be consistent. I got to do this. I got to keep putting applications. And I did it before. And it's funny because I started doing that. And then next thing you know, I'm not, nothing. Nothing's coming. Nothing's coming away. And then all of a sudden, 3-4 different jobs all of a sudden pop up. Now I got to like, oh, which one do I choose? I did that, and it proves it. So like, as years go on and I got all those blessings and those God shots, like even if I fall in rough times, like I'm human, so I'll still get to those doubtful periods of time, but I always remind myself like, you know what, it's going to be okay. Because life has shown that no matter what I've gone through, I've gotten to the other side and I know I'm going to be okay.
You can believe in yourself, and that before we were our own worst. Like I always tell people, man, we can be our own biggest heroes or our own worst enemies.
Yeah.
Our words can either make us believe or kill ourselves. Yeah. So the amazing stuff you're doing now, man, is great, and it shows what you just said. If you believe in yourself first and foremost, man, you can make it. But it's just those earlier years, man, that you went through. I mean, I know we were talking a little bit about, just go back a little bit about what you went through before all these amazing blessings.
Yeah.
Because you had a lot of rough times, man, like during high school, after high school, the drugs and all that stuff. Where were some of those things that you remember at the worst? I mean, we got the highest of highs, but what were some of the lowest of lows?
Yeah, no, there's definitely, and I got some lows in recovery too, man. You know what I mean? Like life happens. So like throughout the using, like I got to a point where I was pretty sure I was going to die alone in my room with a needle in my arm. Like I knew that. Like I told myself, I accepted that fate.
I was just gonna say. So you actually, how old were you about at this point? Around.
When I thought that to myself, probably like 18, 19.
That you were like,
20s.
I know that this is how I'm gonna end right here.
I just and I was young because I started partying young, so I started doing all that rave stuff and all that partying stuff like around 16, and that's when the hard drugs came in. Not to like label, but to me, like the hard drugs where I started doing like the coke and the dope. I was hanging out with my cousin. We were going out to like Manhattan, Newark. It was like they were seasoned. Like, hey, we're gonna go. The heroin's in Newark, the coke is in Manhattan, and that was the best of the best at that point. You know what I mean? So like when we went, and that's where we did. And like I remember people talking about, oh yeah, I'm doing like this amount, and it's almost like bragging rights. And like I didn't get it. Like I'm like, all right, like whatever. I'm just gonna try some stuff, and I was like, I'll just try it because I experimented a lot, and I told myself, I'm like, I'll try it, I'll see what it's like, and that's it. I'm not gonna, I'm not gonna get myself addicted and be stuck there for years.
That guy.
I'm not gonna be the person I looked down on when I was a kid. I'm not gonna be that crackhead over here, or the person that abandoned their kids and their family and all that stuff until years later. Next, like my this girl I was dating, and I'd say at this point. So let me go back. So I went through the progression. I did all that, and then I remember like doing the first time I did heroin. It felt great. That warm, fuzzy feeling, and I was drinking with my cousin, and I was like, wow. The next day, I was throwing up all day. And I said to myself, I'm never doing that again. Next thing you know, I'm back around doing some stuff, got convinced again, and I did it again. And then I liked it. There was no more throwing up. And then it was just, for some reason, back to like what I was saying before with the drinking, it did something to me that made me feel better.
The heroin?
It made me feel better. So, mind you, all these years, all these things that I went through, and all that, all the selling, all the whatever, all those outside things that I was doing to feel better, it was all temporary. I didn't know internal work. I did nothing. So all that feelings, I still feel like crap. I still hated my home life. I hated that my mom was an alcoholic. My dad was an angry person. My dad was very physically abusive, To him, it wasn't, because that's how he grew up. My dad's older, too. He came from a whole different generation. Like they grew up like the mountains of, they're called them like hillbillies over there. They grew up in the mountains in Puerto Rico. And like, I think he went to, I don't know, 3rd grade, 4th grade, and that was it. And then he just worked. Like they just grew up different. They're built different over there, So those values, like my dad, yeah, he's 85 now. So I was raised like a generation before, like from that area, like that's, so it was very different. And like him and my mom, very, very bad relationship. She'd get drunk. She was suicidal. She attacked him, my brother. She'd fight with my sister. Like, she tried to stab them. She tried to set the house on fire. A lot of mental health stuff. I seen her have psychotic breaks.
I was just going to say, and this was in front of you.
This was like my whole childhood till after I got clean. Like, she was a heavy smoker. She drank a lot. She had some periods where she was dry, and then she went through but the mental health stuff. So it was always one or the other. And I could only remember like certain bits and pieces of time where she was like good, and then they switch up meds for some reason, and then all over again.
And the thing is, they go hand in hand.
Yeah.
Especially, it's bad enough to have someone who's got issues with depression, anxiety, PTSD, whatever it is, and then someone who has addiction.
Yeah.
Then you get that your mom who has them both.
Yeah.
And then here, you and your family.
Yeah.
Growing up, seeing, like you said, stabbing. Mom doesn't stab family. Mom hugs me and tells me, not in your life, not in your household.
Yeah. And that's the thing, when she was like fine, wasn't drinking, sweetest woman in the world. And it was a switch. She started drinking, and I think she had that reverse tolerance. You ever hear that? Like, instead of like building a tolerance where you takes more to drink, it's like less. It's like one beer, you could notice a difference with her,
And it was that immediate.
It's that immediate. Like you could see like the switch go over her eyes. I don't know if you know what I'm talking about.
Yes, I do.
You know what I'm talking about?
Yes.
That right over the eyes, and I could just tell. And right away I'm like, oh, and then she puts on her Spanish music, she's dancing and partying. But I know all this happy stuff is gonna change at any moment. It is just like that.
And
that's how my temper was too. My temper was 0 to 100. That's how my temper was. It was just like, I'm fine. You say the wrong thing, the switch right to 100. And I just realized the correlation of how that's how she was when she was like drunk. That's how my anger was. I could be fine. And when I drank, it was the same thing. So when I drank, I'm happy, I'm chill, let's party, let's have fun. You say the wrong thing though, just like that.
So like switch. For you, kind of just like your mom. So here, like I've had buddies just like that, where we'd be sitting around hanging out, and this be all of us guys, and drinking, doing drugs, whatever. And my one buddy, he had those eyes, where the happy drunk, and then you have the happy drunk, the pissed off drunk, the sloppy drunk, and all that. But they were all in one person.
Yeah.
Because I'd look at him, and he'd be drinking,
and
also I'd look at him again, and he'd be like this, and then also I'd look at him, he'd be like, I just saw you, and you were like. you would see it, and it was literally that quick. And, it'd get kind of like the dopey eyes, but then that one look where it was just like that glare.
Yeah.
Where it'd just be staring at you.
Yeah.
No emotion. It was just like there was no one there. And you did, and someone may say something, what up, asshole, just like that, just amongst boys. That right there, just like you said, would set them off. And, it would be that insane. But here it was your mom.
Yeah. So my mom was like that. And then, luckily she didn't stab anyone, but she's tried. Like they're like fighting down the stairs type of stuff. And I grew up seeing that. So I hated being home. That's why at 14, I was out running the streets. That's why I found that acceptance elsewhere. I found it with my friends. I found it elsewhere because at home, I never felt comfortable. I hated being there. I was embarrassed to bring friends there. You know what I mean? Like for me, it was embarrassing to have that. So I had some close friends and they came and we kind of had very similar stuff. But, I get into fights with my, arguments with my mom and get kicked out of the house. Be having to stay in a buddy's house for a couple of days, then go back when she like chilled out. It was always temporary like that until I just kind of went off and just was doing my own thing, And I'd say all the things that I said I wasn't going to become or do or said that I was better than, I started becoming and mimicking almost, And so I remember when I had my first kid, so the girl that we were both in recovery, we both relapsed, and it was this ongoing thing. And I was trying to figure out, how am I going to save this relationship and our kid and my recovery? It was impossible. But I said to myself, I'm going to do it. And I had people, like, at that point, I was going to meetings, I'd be in and out relapsing, and they're like, hey, you need to let this relationship go. And I didn't want to hear that. I was like, no, we're going to make this work. I felt like I knew better than, like, no, you need to focus on you and your recovery. You can't do anything with hers. And I'm like, no, I'm always different. I always wanted to be the exception to the rule.
It's my way.
You know what I mean? I always thought I was going to be the exception to the rule. And I looked at that, this person, you always find that one example that will, like, pretty much justify like what you're trying to say. You find the one example. There's 1,000 others that say otherwise, but I always, this person did it, or this one, you know what I mean? I always try to look at stuff like that. Part of the rationalizing. I try to rationalize stuff. And but yeah, I was not the exception to the rule. When it came to addiction and all that stuff, I was always 100% always the rule. Always. I couldn't just take the bits and pieces of what people told me. I had to do like everything that they were telling me, especially in the beginning. Like I had to do like all this stuff because I remember like going to meetings and they're saying this, don't do that. Alcohol's a drug, and I'm just like all this stuff, and I'm like, you know what? I'm in my 20s. I still want to drink. I'm gonna figure out a way to use successfully, right? Or just minimize my using, because I thought at that point my thinking was so small that I thought my only problem was a heroin addiction. If I could figure out how to use controllably, that was my goal when I was going to meetings in the beginning. To use controllably. I want to be able to control my using because I wasn't ready to give it up. I had those reservations. I wasn't going to give it up completely. But that just wasn't in the cards for me. Anytime I went to rehab, got cleaned up, I started drinking, I went right back to the heroin. Coke, heroin. At the end, I was shooting coke and heroin. At the very end, those were my things, It was just
like
back
a
to
gateway.
back.
I mean, you start the one, just like you were saying, well, I'm going to do it I'll control the consumption. I'm going to control this. But once your inhibitions take over, man, the drinking, your logical thinking is just gone.
It's gone.
Have a few drinks, and you're like, that's all I'm going to have. Mm-hmm. You end up having 2 more. Okay, well, you know what? I'm going to just do a little line.
Yeah.
I'll just do 1. Well, you do it. Then you have another drink. I'll just do 2 more lines.
Yeah.
And it's just a never ending.
Oh, yeah. The alcohol, the inhibitions is a big thing. I mean, I made a lot of poor choices, and I thought to myself, and when I look back, I'm like, I was dangerous on alcohol alone. I'm drinking and driving, I'm like driving like my dad's like old, like, what was it? It was a Ford F-150. It's like, it's a tank. I'm driving, I'm high-fiving mirrors with bam, bam. That's how close I'm getting to cars parked. You know what I mean? Imagine you wake up, you like see your car, like, yeah, that was me. Then that could have easily been a person walking, whatever. Thank God. I didn't kill myself for anyone else. You know what I mean?
Any bad accidents or anything like that?
I had an accident. I remember, I forgot which year it was, one of my birthdays. And I was driving with a friend. I ended up it was bad weather, and I ended up going like, I tried to pull away from like another car, but I went a little too far off, and I slid, lost control, and then went down an embankment and was like under a guardrail. Not a scratch on us. Got pulled out. They pulled us out. Still drivable. Drove it, beat up, back out of there. Yeah. But yeah, that was one of the accidents. My thing is like I had a lot of overdoses. So I had like a lot of overdoses. The last one, I lost oxygen to my brain, so it kind of messed me up a little bit.
Like to the point where you were Narcan?
Oh yeah, I was Narcan. Yeah, so that night. This is my example of insanity, right? So I remember I was in rehab with this kid that I was in treatment with before. So I found old friends in this place. We ended up leaving. He had a check coming. You know where this is going. All right. I got kicked out because my kid's mother decides to go to that same rehab that I was at and tells the people that she's my girlfriend. And at this point, like, why would you do that? I questioned a lot of her decisions at that time, like if it was spiteful or purposeful, you know what I mean? Because that's what she did. And then all of a sudden, one of us has to leave. So I was already there for a few days. I said, well, you stay, get cleaned up. I'm good. I'll just go. And then she ends up leaving that same day anyways because she knows what I'm doing. She always had to be a part of the mix. So anyways, I go. I leave my buddy. We get into a car accident that day. He's driving. I let him drive my car. He got into an accident. We switched up. It was the other person's fault anyways, thank God. So we start going. We're driving. We do our stuff. We get our stuff. We go to my house. Kid's mother's over there. We start using. Pass out. Actually, he passed out first. Threw him in water, smacked him up, tried to get him going. I said, all right. I said, hey, what? I had her babysit him. I went and did my thing. I never locked the door, but I did that day. I locked the door. I pass out. I wake up. Ambulance, Narcan. So because I locked the door, it took a while for everyone to get to me. And that's why I lost oxygen to my brain. I ended up slurring my words after that, a bunch of stuff. Memory's not the same. When I tell you, even back then, even using, I was always sharp. I could remember everything. It did some damage, you know? So anyways, get to the hospital. I'm over there. I got IVs. My only concern is, where's the rest of the dope? That's what I said to my girl. Oh, well, they took most of it, but I still saved some. She's a liar. You know, she did most of the shit. You know what I mean? You know how junkies do, man.
So here
I know what she did.
In ER.
So I'm in the ER and worried about it. And I said, well, get me some. I didn't even wait till I got out of the hospital.
You shot up.
I shot up in the hospital, IV still in myself. And I said to myself, should I use the IV that's in my arm or should I mainline it? Because I'm thinking to myself, this is what I'm thinking. And I said, well, and I swear to you, this is my thinking at that point. And I said, well, if I go in the IV, I might lose some in the IV. So that was my thing. I'll just go mainline it. That's how sick my mind had thought. I ended up using again in the hospital before I left. I didn't realize the brain damage that had already occurred. I get back home. They let me go. I still had more stuff. I couldn't stand still. I'm passing out. I kept passing out. And I went to my friend's houses that lived around the corner from me just to kind of be over there because everyone got high over there so I could get high in peace over there. So now we're over there. I guess when I fell out, they were asking my mother a bunch of questions, and she knows I used to hang out there. So when I went there, the cops went there trying to see where I got drugs, and their father, the kids I used to hang out with, their father, he ended up he had a warrant. So when they went there, he got arrested. So when I got there, the son, one of my friends, Steve, he ended up, he's like, hey, he told me what happened. He started talking, blah, blah. I'm out of it. I can't even stay awake. I'm passing out. I'm just
wait, this is when you just got out of the hospital.
Left rehab, got into a car accident, got high, fell out, went to the hospital, went back same day, same night. So at night, this is one day, went right back to my friend's house, got there. He starts bad-mouthing my mother, all this, your mother's a bitch. And once he said your mother's a bitch, I can't even stand up. I'm swinging at this kid. They have a little pit bull at the house there. I don't know if you see this scar right here.
It gotcha.
Sweetest dog in the world. It was a little runt. But if it saw any type of violence around it, it'd attack. So me and him are going at, he's like, stop. He probably could have kicked my ass that day, but he knows I would have got him the next day because I was out of it. So he's on the bed. He's trying to kick me off and all this, and I'm just trying to swing him. Pit bull's on my arm. I'm swinging with a pit bull on my arm trying to punch him. She gets off of me. She's biting him, bites me, bites him. It's like basically trying to break up the fight. But I remember, like literally, pit bull, she was on my arm, and I got this little
gash there from the
It was
teeth.
actually, believe it or not, it's faded some of this, but it was
you can
really
I
big.
can see it from here.
Yeah, so like this part faded, so it was like this, the whole thing, like that. That was the only scar I had. But that was from the pit bull latched onto my arm, and I'm swinging at this kid. He's telling me to stop.
You got to get the pit bull's name
my
tattooed
goodness.
right there.
Yeah.
Man, so I'm still blown away. So you're swinging at this guy. The pit's on your arm. Where does it go from there?
And then we just calmed down. His sister broke us up, and then he apologized for talking about my mom, and we just kind of calmed down, and I just kept using that night.
So here you guys are going at it. Next minute, you guys are using together.
Yeah, pretty much, yeah. The whole house used. We all used. Girlfriends there, And the thing is, so at that point, I got really low at that point because, so prior to that, really key important thing is, so me and her were using together. We tried to get clean, used together, had a kid. DCF got involved because, again, went to a rehab. She goes there, and the first thing I say, hey, do not talk about the kid. And she goes, first thing she does is starts talking about the kid at home. Because she went in, so we took turns. I went in, then she went in, because I was dead set on we're going to get this family clean and get together. I'm home. DCF comes to my house. Hey, we here because she told me I was watching the kid still using. And I'm like, why are you saying all this? You know what I mean? So this is what I'm saying. This is before that wonderful night that I had. So I'm just like, so now DCF is involved. DCF gets involved. I went off on them. Basically told them to go fuck themselves. They come back. I wasn't going to be in cooperative. They come back with the police take my kid. So my kid was 6 months old. They took my kid. That's when I went. After that, that's when I went to the races. And I got to that point of that wonderful night with the pit bull on my arm. And then I kept trying to go back and forth. Kept trying to do it with her. And eventually I did it on my own. But before it got to that point, she pretty much abandoned. She didn't try. That was my oldest. That was my first son, my oldest. He ended up getting adopted. It was an open adoption. So I was it was 2 years, or it was 2 years past from that. I was back and forth in and out of treatment centers, trying to do it with her, and just a bunch of stuff just happened. And between her, my ex, and my sister, who we all used together, I couldn't do it with them around. I just couldn't do it with them around. So she ended up leaving. And then I just tried to separate myself after a while. So, but yeah, so with the whole DCF thing, so they told me at that point, I was in a halfway house, and they told me, hey, listen, we're going to go through with all this. You can try to fight it. But the lawyer, the public defender I had, pretty much told me, she's like, you're not going to have a fighting chance. So just take the deal. It could be an open adoption if you give up your rights, or you can fight it. But if they win, you're not going to see your kid unless they decide to reach out to you when they're of age. At that point, I'm like, I don't have my own place. I'm in a halfway house. When am I going to go to court? You know what I mean? So it was a tough decision, but that's what I did. The person that adopted him, from the beginning, good contact, had visits. I got completely clean shortly after. I got on methadone, and then I got off of methadone. And that's when I was clean. So I did the methadone, and then I was on and off in about a year. They tried to keep me on there for we try to, for 2 years. I was like, no. I said, I'm feeling good. I'm going to work. I'm doing this stuff. I said, I want to wean off. They try to bump me up a lot, and people can take this how they want. I just feel the way they have that system. It's I didn't want to be stuck in that system. I'm going there, getting my dose, and everyone's still, people go there, use it for their wake up, and they're still talking this stuff, that stuff. And it wasn't, I felt so disconnected to people then, and I really wanted, at that point, I was set, I need to really do this, And I remember getting off of the methadone, I weaned myself off. Just yeah, no, we wait to do this. We bring you up to a certain amount. I'm at 50 milligrams. I was on 50 milligrams, and I was fine. They put me to 60 milligrams. They couldn't bring me out at 60 milligrams. I'm nodding out at night. I remember driving. I'm ready to fall asleep driving. And I remember one time I went over the lines and I got pulled over. I was no, I'm just tired. And you sure you didn't take it? I was no. Even though basically I was on something, right? And then I realized. So then right after that, the next day I said, bring me back down. That's when I took control of it.
Why'd they pop you back?
That's how they do it.
Wouldn't it be just the opposite? I mean, I've never done it, so I don't know.
You would think that. I question a lot of things in the medical profession. Okay. From what I've experienced and all that stuff, I question a lot of stuff.
And we have to.
And I, from then on, was the beginning of me being very vigilant of my medical caretaking, because I went from there and I said, nope, this is what I'm going to do. And you know what? I'm going to get off. And I weaned myself off slow. I did it very slow. I controlled every single bit of that until I got off. And then I was in the program from that point on. I stayed in the program. I was very involved. I did a lot of I was doing a lot of meetings. I was doing a lot of what do you call it? Volunteer work. You know, I took a lot of commitments.
Community
I was
service
I was very involved in the program, and I did a lot of stuff. I was the guy, you know, bringing new people to meetings. I was doing a lot of stuff, and that's what I did, and that helped keep me clean for a while. I was still missing the internal work for a while. I did some writing. I didn't, but now the isms were coming out. I wasn't doing the drugs, so like all these other behaviors started coming out. You know, like the girls, the money stuff, the womanizing, all that stuff. It became my new addiction, and I didn't realize like how much more work I still had to do. So even in recovery, I caused a lot of damage. Even in early recovery, I did it like for years. Like I did some stuff. I thought, you know, I had that mentality of like, as long as it doesn't come to light, or as long as I don't do this, or as long as whatever, I did the rationalizing and justifying again.
We always justify.
You know what I mean? Well, I'm just gonna do this. You know, I was being selfish. I was still being selfish, but without the substance. You know?
See, that's the thing too. It's like, well, even though I'm doing this and I'm being an ass about it, I'm not using, so I can do this.
Yeah.
You know,
and you know, and even before I got to that point, so I remember, so right when I got clean, I was dating one of my friends at the time. And it was early, and I remember we separated a little bit. She had to go get cleaned up. I was doing like my thing. I said, "All right, that's fine." And actually, let me tell you my last day. So my last day of using, I'll get into this real quick. I'm dating that girl, right? And I was still doing my thing. I was, you know, okay, but I remember I ended up deciding to smoke weed for some reason. But I'm with this girl, and mind you, I haven't really smoked weed, you know, after like all the drugs. I barely smoked weed. So that time I smoked it. And I was supposed to go do a roofing job for my buddy. And I smoked weed and I was out of it. Like, I was like, what the hell? Like, I didn't even know what I was doing, you know? I remember I smoked it and I was just like, I felt dumb. And I was like, I need to sleep this off. So I took a nap. This is early because I was done with I was weaning like from that program, right? So I was weaning off at that point. My friend was still going. Matter of fact, the one that I had to fight with, his sister. So I brought her. She was still going to the prom. So I just brought her there, and I was waiting. And for some reason, I remember there was this joint, and I was just sitting there. I don't know for how long, and I decided just to smoke it. And I'm just like, I don't even know why I did it. I just did it. And then I brought her back, and I'm like, oh, I got to take a nap. And I wake up. I look at the time. I took a little nap. Slept a couple hours. My phone was blown up. My buddy said, hey, you got to do this roof. It was just like a little shed. So I went. I did the roof. The girl I was dating came, and then she helped me. She just came to hang out, and I was cleaning up some of the shingles. And then she was like, I remember she was telling me that, and I was still selling. By the way, I was still selling, right? I remember she's like, there's a couple things she was saying. So like at that point, she's like, I remember like I was smoking. She's like, well, why did you do that? You know what I mean? And I said, I don't even know. And I said to myself, I remember from smoking. I just said to myself, I'm like, man, if I keep lying like this, like I'm gonna go right back. Like I just saw, like, you know, I played it all out. You know what I mean?
Yep.
And actually, I was done with the program at the time. I was done with the take homes and everything. I was just bringing my friend, and that was the last time I did anything. I smoked that weed, and it just something at that point after, and I talked to her. I said, you know what? I'm just gonna go to meetings. I did the one day at a time, the cliche thing. I didn't even like count my clean time because I wasn't too sure. I still wasn't too sure. Remember I told you before, I still had that thing inside of me where I wasn't too sure I could follow through with anything.
Yes.
It was still there. So it was there. I was like, well, you know what? I just won't use today. I won't use today. I go to a meeting. I did this. I won't use today. And next thing you know, I'm doing a song. I'm like, man, I think I'm coming up. So my actual clean date, I say it's May 1st, by the way, but it's actually the end of April. I just don't remember the exact date because I try to remember. And at that point, I talked to my friend. I tried to figure out when it was that I brought her to the program and whatever. Okay. And I knew it was like the last week of April. So I didn't want to I didn't want to cop short and like cheat. You know what I mean? So I said, you know what, May 1st, nice, easy day to remember. And that's how I came out with my clean day. And it wasn't like this extravagant, crazy story. You would have thought the Pitbull night would have been enough, right? It wasn't. It was just enough of the accumulation of stuff to at this point to say to me, like, do I want to go back and start over? Do I want to, because that one smoke, that one toke of weed, that one drink is going to bring me right back to whatever. Yeah. And at this point, I was going to meetings here and there. I was doing some stuff, and I was seeing the same people that were being successful that stuck around. And I'm like, it didn't remind me. I always thought about what I didn't have, but at this point, I started thinking about the things that I want to have. And that was a little bit of a different thought process for me where I'm like, you know what? It was always like, oh man, I lost this. Oh man, I don't got this. This time it's like, I want so much more for myself.
Now you're seeing the
I'm,
positive
I'm seeing
part.
this. I still got this chance with my kid. I'm doing it. Like, I need to change. You know what I mean? And that's right then and there's something in my head clicked.
That was a changing point.
And I just did it. And every day I was just going to meetings. I was doing this. I was doing that. And I stayed clean. After staying clean, I had to figure out, like, listen, I got to do some more work on myself because I'm still doing some damage, you know? Before that happened, on my 60 days clean, so my brother, remember my half brother I was telling you? So he was in and out. He did some meetings with me. He was in and out. And I remember he took off on a Friday and decided to take my relationship with this girl. We're going to go we moved very fast, but I remember, like, you know what? I felt like she was the one at the point, you know, and we're going to get engaged, all this stuff. And I was going to tell my brother, I was excited to tell my brother what I was doing, all this stuff. And the whole weekend I'm reaching out, nothing. And then that following Wednesday, New Britain cop knocks on our door. And I remember my mom answered. My mom, she's dry. So she stopped drinking her last, I don't know how many years. It was just the mental health stuff with her. But also a very heavy smoker. She went through cancer, all this stuff, esophageal cancer. So she wasn't very good mentally and physically not the best of shape. So when the cops came and knocked on the door, she was bawling. Oh, and my brother, his name's Jose, we call him Junior. And so they found Junior and blah, blah. And then I was like, what? Like, it took a minute to register. So at that period of time, there was like a batch going around that was really strong that was taking people out. And he overdosed. So that Friday, when he took off, my dad and mom, they weren't together for a while, but he would, because they owned a house, so he basically slept upstairs. So they weren't together, but he'd come down. He bought a house in Ohio, so he was there. He left that weekend, and so he leaves. It's just me and my mom there. My sister, she lived downstairs. She's still using. She's in a wheelchair. She's quadriplegic. She has some use. Her addiction put her there too, by the way, from drinking and driving. And she still kept drinking and smoking crack. Like, that's why at that point I had to remove myself from this household.
Situation, yes.
I had to, because I saw myself and I had to stop relying on mom and dad. But at this point I get there and I'm seeing this thing happen, like the cops, it's not registering for a second. Like, I felt numb. Like, is this really happening? Like, you know, they're telling me my brother's dead, you know? And all they had was like, they had his wallet and keys and some stuff. Yeah, we found blah, blah, blah. And we need someone to come and identify him. And I'm like, what the hell? And I remember, I'm just in shock. My mom's like losing it. She can't do it. So I'm talking to the cop. I'm like, okay. And like, I'm not even in tears yet. You know, I'm just like getting in, the shock and just, okay, and this and that. My mom's bawling, losing over there. I got to try to calm her down. I got to tell his son. I got to do this. I'm talking to my friend. I said, listen, I might need you to take a ride with me because I'm going to have to, you know, and I remember I'm in the store and I'm talking and the girl that's doing the register because I'm shopping, she looks at me like her heart broke for me. You know what I mean? I was like, yeah, this is my brother, blah, blah, blah. And I got to go identify him. And I don't know if I can, as long as you can drive, because I don't know how I'm going to handle it. Because it was bad. Like, this is midsummer.
Oh, sure.
Midsummer, like 5 days out. You know what I'm saying? The condition's not good. So eventually they call me back. They say, hey, yeah, listen, it's not even worth you coming down here. He's so badly like decomposed at this point.
Oh my God.
That you won't even. So they try to, does he have any tattoos? So I had to identify him through his tattoos over the phone. And it was a relief that I have to see it. But also for a lot of years, it was like, because I never had that.
That closure, man.
Yeah, I always felt like, is it real? You know what I mean?
You
like,
didn't see it.
Well, what if it was someone else? Like, I always wanted, you know, like, had that thing inside of myself, like, well, what if, you know, like this positive, like wanted to be, you know, not what it was. Yeah. But having to do that, break the news to his son, having to plan. I'm here. It's Wednesday. I just celebrated 60 days clean.
When all this happened.
And I'm just like, man, how do I handle this? I got to take care of my mom, make sure she's okay. Make sure she's okay. Handle all his services. I went to like the funeral place. They helped me out tremendously, but I didn't know how to plan a funeral.
You had to be
I'm learning how to live life again.
Yeah.
And I just like, bam, that's here. This is what you have to deal with.
Yep.
You know? And I had to do that. I had to deal with that stuff. I had to go on. I had Hep C. I had to deal with the interferon. Like that whole treatment was brutal.
So here you're dealing with all these things.
So this is one thing. This is the next thing. So like the next phase, some years go by. I'm in recovery, making very poor choices. I'm on interferon, and I don't want to blame the interferon, but it did mess me up emotionally and mentally. I was a wreck. I was in a bad marriage at the time. I'm in a bad marriage, third kid, because the other one that I thought was the one wasn't the one. We had a kid. I started paying child support. I was still being responsible. I moved on with this other woman. We got married. As soon as she got pregnant and married, she completely changed. That didn't work out, and I was like in this. It was rough. It was a rough marriage on both ends, and she treated me like dirt for certain things. Actually, she just treated me like dirt, and then I started acting out in certain ways because I'm that vindictive type of person still. Oh, this is how you're gonna treat me? I'm gonna go do this. So then I'm out, doing my thing.
So right now, you still got your brother situation, all that. You got to take care of responsibilities now. Now you got to be the adult. You got to take care of the brother. You got to take care of yourself. You got to take care of the family situation. So how does that go from that point going forward now?
Well, I was there. I had to move. So with the girl that got engaged to before I got married, we moved out. I said, listen, I got to get out of here. Because with my sister always calling this and that, I'm going to get pulled back in. And I told my mom, I said, I can't be here.
Exactly.
I come in, and it's sad because I went there. We'd come visit. We'd do stuff. Then when me and her split, I went back to a sober house. I got a couple years clean. I just had to do it to kind of reset and then try to figure out what I was going to move. So I went there for a little bit. Got another, was working at a certain place. After 6 months clean, by the way, I had a job. I stayed there for like 13 years. I never thought I'd be in one place that long.
Okay.
But 6 months clean, so I had a job. I had all this stuff. I just had to like reset. I'm paying child support. I had to learn how to do things a little different.
Sure.
I moved off on my own. Well, actually, I was in that relationship with the one that I married, but we ended up getting a place together. We moved off and moved on. And then, so I still like would reach out to my mom. But at this point, when I moved on after my ex, my second son's mother, she was very close with my mom, so she was like there, and then it caused a little bit of tension and stuff. So I'm just like, I had to like tell my mom, like, hey, we gotta make some boundaries here with stuff, because she was like pretty nasty, so it made it hard to like even be,
You can't even be civil.
No. And then like at this point, like, and then she's drinking and driving with the kids, all this stuff, and like, so I got to the point where like she physically attacked me one time.
Yeah.
And this is just me going to visit my son. She used my son to kind of control everything. And then when I wasn't playing that anymore, I remember she threw a plate and I ducked. And I'm holding my son. She was drunk. She was tipsy. And she's like, so are you going to come back? She kept trying to come in. I'm like, I'm at the sober house. It's like, no. Like, maybe it's something different. Like, I wanted some change to happen, but it didn't. And this is before I started seeing the other one. So I was hoping for it, but it wasn't. She just kept showing me worse and worse at that point. She went through her own process, and it was a little bit of a downward spiral before she got better, but it was rough. So when she did that, I called the cops. I'm already paying child support. She's holding the kid for me after like a bunch of stuff, and it was just a whole bunch of things that happened, but she got arrested. They dropped the charges. She did like an anger management class, dropped the charges, and I'm like, you know what? If I did that, I'd be in prison. Like, it was just crazy how they treated me, and I'm just like, you know what?
So you got to reset.
I'm gonna do my stuff. I gotta do my stuff. Yeah, I was going through it. It was a rough time.
So right now, man, you got to reset everything. You've already gone through everything. So you get this, you get things taken care of. Unfortunately, this happens with your brother. All these things happen, but looking back, these things that get thrown at you are making you make decisions responsibly, not using, and all this other stuff. So now, like fast forward to now where we're at now, man. So now you're going forward. How did you get like from that point to where you are now?
So again, it was a process. The way I reacted to everything wasn't perfect. I'll tell you that right now. It wasn't perfect. I went through that. I moved fast in my relationship. I went to the next one. I got married. I did that. That was horrible. Another one where that turned out to be like physical too, and towards me. Like, it was just like, it was like some bad stuff, man. And then, so at that point, before I split with my ex-wife at the time, I went through the interferon. It messed me up. So I was going through that. I had to get went to interferon. I had to get a surgery. I had like this growth thing. It was like an infected hair thing. I had to get it removed. It had to go under, So the first time I had to deal with a surgery. Remember we talking about surgery before?
Yep.
So the first time I had to do surgery and recovery, and I'm like, all right. And I did it. I just said, nope, no pain meds. I refuse. I was terrified. I had friends that they were clean for 10 years, 15 years, and they started taking meds. It opened up that doorway. They ended up abusing their meds, and they got to start over. And I was like, I'm not. It's like, oh, no, you got to so listen, I'm not going to do it. So either you're going to give me what I'm telling you. I said, I'll do ibuprofen, whatever. And this is, again, where I said before, I had to start being very vigilant and responsible for my healthcare.
Yes.
And I said, no, I'm not going to do that. So this is what we're going to do, or we're not going to do the surgery. So when I put it like that, they're like, okay, this and that. And then next thing you know, they gave me like, just ibuprofen, and I was fine.
Mm-hmm.
I was fine. I did that. I went to the interferon. I had the surgery. Marriage was going bad. My mom's cancer comes back. It spread all over the place. They had to put a feeding peg back into her body. She didn't want to do it. The doctor says, if you don't do it, then this is it. We could just make her comfortable till you pass. Because she was getting septic. The renal kidney failure was going in. So at that point, they go and she decides to do it. They put her in. She never came out of the process.
Oh, jeez.
So I had to do that, and I had to do it again.
You got to go through the whole thing.
All over again. I had to do the whole funeral thing, bury her, the whole thing. And then, but I did it, and I had help. I had certain people reach out to people, and I did that whole thing.
So you had, all this has just been total chaos that you've been dealt with over and over and over. And this is starting at a young age. And it's just been nonstop throughout the years, man.
Yeah.
That you've dealt with. And that's what we all deal with, not at different situations and stuff. So, I mean, you go through all that, but, okay, so now, like from now, how does you get to where you're at right now? What are you doing now that's keeping you on the straight and narrow? What are you doing now that is, because,
Yeah, so starting from there, so like from there on, I utilize my network, right? And that's changed over the years. Like I keep in touch with people that are involved in the process, right? And not so much in like right now, I don't really do meetings or anything anymore.
Okay.
I got involved with other things. But after that, so I went through all that stuff, and I went through a slew of really bad choices, right? I got very vindictive. I went through like some bad stuff in relationships, and I did some bad things to other people, which I totally regret, and I'll make some amends to some. I tried to some already, but I definitely made some poor choices that follow me, man. You know what I mean? Like I made some poor choices with the women and all this stuff that follow me, and I ended up having to cause a lot more chaos. Now this is like self-inflicted, where after a while I learned like I need to make some more changes.
Okay.
So I was doing some writing. I did some step work. I kind of also I went into some therapy. I got some therapy.
Mm-hmm.
I was working out. I haven't been working out recently, but I started doing all these other things because, recovery, addiction, physically, mentally, spiritually. So I couldn't just do one part. I couldn't lose myself in just the gym. I couldn't do this. So I started trying to get a little more balance, and the going to therapy and realizing like all these family systems, all these learned behaviors, all these things that I had to break down, seeing where they came from. And it got me to a point where I didn't use my sponsor as like, hey, like a relationship counselor. Hey, I'm going through this, I'm going through that. So I used that therapist for what I needed. I used my sponsor to work steps.
You didn't have a crutch. You were taking control.
I used the tools that I needed for what they were meant to be. Gotcha. So I wasn't using my sponsor as a therapist. Sure. I used him to talk, have that relationship with, and work on my steps. I used my therapist to talk about all the other stuff. I used my friends to be friends. I learned how to make those lines, and then eventually that helped me. So like now I was getting more out of everything. And it's been an ongoing thing. Like and they tell you that stuff, but you don't realize it until you're doing it. So like I used her for this, and then I started seeing a lot of things with relationships, a lot of stuff with myself, and it's still an ongoing process. Sometimes I'll still backslide in certain behaviors or certain thought processes, certain things. You know what I mean? But you know what?
Life.
I make less mistakes now, and I make better decisions now. So I'm up in the game.
Then
right?
That's just it. I mean,
I made job changes.
With the things that we're doing now, that's what it has to be. Is the changes that we make, and just hearing for everything that you said, man, is before growing up, you weren't in charge of any of that, man. It was the adrenaline rush that was making the decisions back then. Then it was the drugs and the violence, your upbringing. These were all things that at a young age that you were inflicted with that usually you don't have to deal with, man. and then going through all this up to now. And, now we got these people watching this thinking, okay, that you figured it out by using the resources the correct way, by taking charge of, your medical condition, being involved in it, not just saying, okay, well, you're the doctor and okay, this. So that's amazing. Right now, because we're going to be wrapping up here in a bit. What's your best advice, man? Because we're going to have to get you to come back on again with everything that you got going on. For someone who's in your position right now, what's the best advice that you could give that person that might be feeling hopeless right now?
All right. Just real quick. Getting honest with stuff, even the bad stuff, even the mistakes, even the dark stuff, whatever, maybe not right at the moment. Like, there's certain things that took me time to, like, the shameful, especially being clean. But like when I did those mistakes, I went back to the rooms and I talked about stuff. There may be some times where I'll talk about more things. It's about like really exposing myself and letting some things like almost like purging it out and talking about things.
Mm-hmm.
Also having good people in my corner where I could talk things through and kind of get some good feedback and learn. Like one thing about the sponsorship relationship is when I share something, when they share something back, where you don't feel alone, or like there's like, man, you hold on to this thing like you feel like you're so shitty for doing this,
yes.
And you find out 20 other people did it too.
Yes,
and it's not to excuse it, but hey, you're not alone, and as long as you don't quit before that miracle happens, like we talked about, I have a chance to change. If I pick up, do something stupid, give into any like negative thoughts or end it or anything, because I got into that point too. There's some points I didn't want to wake up in the morning. Sometimes I got to the point like after I did so much damage where it wasn't about using. I wanted to end it.
You get to
using
that
wasn't an
point.
option, but I wanted to freaking end it. And I don't get to those points anymore. So I don't know. As far as like just staying involved, continuing the process. If you take 2 steps back, just keep going, because tomorrow you could take 3 steps forward. Right?
I like what you said too about how some of the bumper sticker shit that you were like,
yeah,
this is bullshit.
This is bullshit until you see it happen.
Until you see it yourself.
Yeah.
About don't quit. These little things. We had someone else saying the same thing that you were saying about these. Sometimes it's like little phrases, like you're worthy, you're loved, you're important, you matter. Kind of like the stuff that you're saying that before people were telling you, and you're like, screw that. That's not me. But it is, and like you're just saying now, as long as you believe in it, it worked for you. Once you started to believe in the steps,
you got to believe it and do it. So like, I saw myself as that kid for like a while. Then I saw myself as a piece of crap for a while because of the things I was doing. So as I kept doing it, fake it till you make it isn't just fake. It's doing it. So you got to do it until you actually believe it, because what's going to happen is you're going to become it.
Exactly.
So you're not faking it no more. You're going to just do it because I did as I was told. I did as if. And eventually I was doing as if. I did what these guys were doing because you know what? These guys they stuck around. They've been 20 years clean. They've been doing this. I thought half of it was bullshit. I said, you know what? I'm just going to do it anyways. And then next thing you know, I'm doing it. So like now I don't see myself as the fat kid with glasses. I don't see myself as the junkie that ruined everything, because so many years, what I did is I mended relationships. I became trusted again. And that's what I started becoming. So as I started doing those things, a responsible employee, I finished projects, right? Mm-hmm. I looked into it like to a different degree now, where people are like, hey, they hand stuff off to me because they know you're the guy that'll do it.
Now you're reliable.
Now I'm the guy that actually does it. I don't have to question if I'm able to do it. Yes. I know I'm going to get it done.
You know you can do it.
You know what I mean? And those things, and taking those good positive things and putting in every area. So I know when it comes to parenting, I'm going to be a good father because I continue to be a good father. I don't have to continue to feel guilty because, hey, I lost my son at an early age because I was using, because addiction took me over. Because now he calls me dad, right? I did therapy with him too. You know what I mean? He goes, we do things. We do Marvel movies together. I take him rock climbing because I'm involved with the Phoenix, right? Organization. We do sober activities. So I may not do meetings anymore, but I still stay involved. Exactly. I do things with Phoenix. I go to meditation groups. I got really spiritual. So I started doing all these things that in the beginning, I felt like I was in a bubble with just meetings. Now I take anything and everything that I could use, whether it's therapy, whether it's the Brian Cody
I was
Foundation
just
and,
going to say,
and
well,
volunteering
you do
there.
stuff. You're part.
I give back.
Maybe not the meetings and all that stuff, but you are a part of the community. You're part of the family because I'll be seeing you in August at these events, and you're going to be there, but not just as a speaker, as a family member, all that. You're taking care of like vending. You're taking care of all these other parts of that. So you're like the foundation of all this. So when people come in and they get this, this idea, well, it's just all this is about is sitting in a meeting and talking about stories. No, that's about getting it out and understanding what it is, and then fulfilling it. What you're doing now, applying all like the new Tito, man, and all these positive things that you just mentioned, putting all of these things in the right places. Yeah. And that's the best thing about this, and like I said before we wrap this up, man, you have come such a long way. The amazing thing, talking about the stabbings and all this other stuff to where you are now is incredible, and showing that there is hope for people. And again, like I said, with your foundation right now, is there anything that you want as far as promote that you're involved in? Any different agencies or foundations that you're part of right now that you want to promote?
I volunteer with the Phoenix.
Okay.
They changed the app. I'm trying to remember what it's called right now. They
So
changed
if
it to
they
something else.
reach out to
No, so there's an app. Oh man, I forget exactly what it's called.
you
But you can see the Phoenix Rising.
That's what I was
So
gonna say.
if you look at the Phoenix on Facebook, you'll find them there. They can help you get on the app. It's sober activities. You don't have to be in recovery. You could be an ally. You could be whatever. You just may want to do something that doesn't involve drinking and hanging out with that like type of thing. And we do rock climbing. We have MMA. We have yoga. We got sound healing. You name it. And then I get involved, and we can make our own groups, and it's a community, and people from all fellowships go there. People from no fellowships go there. It's beautiful.
Okay.
It's a beautiful thing, and it's because it's about doing things and living life, man.
It's
being
get
clean
sober
and live
enjoying
life.
being sober. Well, definitely check out the Phoenix, and we'll go in more about that afterwards. We'll have them edited and stuff like that with the information. So we'll make sure we take care of that. And also, obviously, with Tito, with the Brian Cody Brothers and Sisters Foundation, as well with the Hope Dealers and everything you're doing with them.
Yeah, anything they put on, I get involved with.
Well, Coach Tony Morrissey, can't say enough about you and all the help there. So definitely appreciate it all. And like I said, we'll be chatting more about this. I'm going to be coming in August. We'll be doing shows from down there as well at the event. So we'll pull you off to the side. And we'll be doing some more stuff there. So,
Sounds great.
We're going to definitely talk more about it, things that you have to say and all that. It's not a one and done, like I've said before to my guests. We do follow-up, so we're going to do follow-up with that. So I definitely appreciate you sharing some of this stuff, man. It was intense hearing some of these stories, and I'm sure it wasn't the easiest to tell, but you're saving lives by telling it. So really appreciate it, man. And like I said, any last words here before we sign off?
Anyone struggling with addiction, just know there's definitely an answer, and it may not just be one.
Okay.
So find your path, and it doesn't have to be that one path. There's many paths.
Definitely.
Don't ever feel like recovery is boring, because I hear that kind of stuff.
Yes.
There's things to do. What's boring is being stuck in your room with a spike in your arm.
The boring is sitting there with the shades down all by yourself. Tito, man, I thank you so much for coming on here. Thank you for opening up and real talk.
Yeah.
Real talk.
Life is worth living.
It is.
And I'll tell you right now, I'm 46 years old, and I'm having the best time of my life right now.
Then there you have it, man. And the thing is, it's never over. The only time it's over is when you give up. The only time it's over when your eyes don't open. So please, listen to the words he just said. The Phoenix Foundation, check it out. We'll be posting more information about that as well. You can find Tito at the end of August at the Brian Cody Brothers and Sisters Foundation. He'll be there busting his ass like he does at all of these foundations and all of these events. And definitely appreciate you being here today and sharing. I'm sure, like I said, it wasn't easy, but you're helping a lot of people. So thank you guys so much for another episode. And please check us out. Go to YouTube to My Fight Our War. Subscribe there and share our content. And flash over to TikTok and follow us there on TikTok as well. It'd be very helpful. Until then, thank you guys for everything you've done. And remember, addiction's only a word, not a death sentence. And keep fighting the good fight.